G'day guys, Chronicles of Solid here and welcome back to Bike Banter. Sorry we couldn't be in the garage today, it was just too noisy outside, the sun's out, the birds are chirping, the neighbours are mowing their lawns, it's all going on. So I'm in here hiding out, trying to make the audio as best as I can. So the viewer comments are pretty damn good this month. I wanted to discuss with you the merits of waiting and not buying a first gen motorcycle, whether you should do that or not, to wait until all the problems are worked out. I also go into big bore kits, whether they're worth it or not. I update you guys on my next motorcycle, how I'm going finding my next WR250R. And I also am doing what I'm finding is happening a lot, motorcycle counseling in a lot of ways. People are really coming to me and asking which bike out of these two or these three should I get. So there's a few of those comments, so we dive deep into the merits of those particular motorcycles. So let's get straight into it. The first comment is from V, and V is suggesting that it's better to wait for the second generation of a motorcycle rather than rushing out and getting the first, with all the problems that can often pop up with a first generation motorcycle. So they like to wait until the bike's had a few years to work out all the kinks and the manufacturer to address them. And I tend to fall into that category as well. I always like to wait a few years for the manufacturer to work out all the problems, but I usually get a bike in that time that's already been out for a while, and then once they've worked out the problems, I then shift to that motorcycle. So I certainly don't sit on the fence and wait. I enjoy riding, but I know there's those guys that are more mechanically minded. They like just getting the first gen bike, that instant gratification, but they also have the skills to back it up and work on the bike and figure out and fix those problems themselves. So I'm wondering which side of the fence you guys sit on. Do you like to wait for the manufacturer to address a few of the issues, or do you prefer to run out and grab that bike straight away? Let me know in the comment section below. But especially to the new riders, sometimes if you're not mechanically minded, it can pay off to wait a year or two rather than getting the first generation of a motorcycle. So the next question is from JD, and he is looking at getting a DRZ 400E, and he's wanting to know whether it's a reliable and good choice as a dual sport. And you're also asking me whether I have ridden one. The answer is yes, I have ridden the DRZ 400E. I haven't ridden the S, but then we don't get the S here in Australia. So what are my thoughts on the DRZ? Well, it's 2 thumbs up from me, mate. They're a fantastic motorcycle. It's hard not to blow smoke up the DRZ 400's arse, as it is quite a great dual sport, and there's a reason it's been so popular for so long. It is just a really great mix of not too big of a motor, so it's still reasonably light, but you still get more power than a 250, and it really can do everything from single track to long distance adventure trips, and it has all the accessories to allow you to do just that. So there is plenty of reasons why to get a DRZ. It is a great bike. There's plenty of knowledge on how to fix all the common problems on these. The other thing is there are no real major issues with the DRZ. It's been out so long, they've all been worked out. So any problems that do pop up, someone would have gone through them before and you'll be able to find a fix on the internet. So that's a major factor when I'm looking at a bike, is there knowledge available for the major things that go wrong with the bike? If there are, I feel much better about the purchase. And in this case, there's encyclopedias of knowledge on this bike. So that's another reason this is a fantastic bike. It's also just my riding experience with it. It really felt like WR in a lot of ways. It's a little more top heavy. You do feel that pork a little bit more. You do notice the 10 kilos or so. And it isn't as great on the highway as the 250R. Now, it's not because the DRZ doesn't have the power to pull. It has noticeably more torque than the WR250R, and it's easier to loft the front wheel. The problem is with the gearing once you get out on the highway. It is quite a short ratio, so I find you're starting to push the bike at about 100, and you're really pretty much topping out at about 130-ish. So I would just give that as a warning if you're doing lots of high-speed highway riding, which you said you're not really doing, so I don't think it'll be an issue for you. So yes, definitely you're on the right track. I'd also like to put the call out there for any DRZ owners. If you could please offer your information and experience for JD down in the comment section below, as they'll be able to respond a lot better, because I only had half an hour on this bike, so it really doesn't tell you everything there is to know. But I try not to be too positive, but this is just one of those bikes that really is pretty damn decent and it's hard to fault. The only major complaints, like I said, is it's a bit top heavy. It's not so great on the highway, and I'm a little frustrated at Suzuki for not updating it. It's been out since I think about 1999 and they really haven't done anything other than change the colors. But other than that, it's a really great choice, especially if you're going secondhand. Look for one that's been well looked after but has a few choice mods to save you some cash, and you can't really go wrong. So that's my opinion, mate. I hope that helps. So the next question is from Grumpy Squid. That's a great name, by the way, love it. And Grumpy Squid is wanting to know between choosing a DRZ 400 and a Versys X300. And they've stated that they're not really wanting to do any off-road riding or any dirt riding. So that's very strange that you've chosen these two bikes if you're not doing any off-road riding. Now, I can see the Versys X300 makes a lot of sense if you're doing a lot of road touring and you want a smaller displacement, maybe for the insurance, maybe you're a new rider or maybe you're a shorter rider and it's easy to get your feet on the ground, and it would make a lot of sense. And it also makes a great commuter as it has plenty of wind protection, ABS, and the comforts of a road bike. Whereas the DRZ doesn't really make a lot of sense. I'm not sure why you've got it as a choice. Maybe you're thinking of it as a motard and having a bit of hooligan fun on it. But if you're not, I would scratch the DRZ from the list. As with all dual sports, it comes quite compromised for the road. It is a 50-50 motorcycle. So to make it good in the off-road arena, it obviously has to sacrifice some on-road performance. So it doesn't make sense as a regular ride on the road if you're not utilizing it as well as a dual sport. So I would take that off the list, mate. Look at the X300, but also look at its competition. There's plenty of really great competition out there. You've got the CB500X, you've got the KTM 390 Adventure, and the BMW G310 GS. They're all in the same ballpark price-wise, and they all offer something a little bit different to the Versys. The Versys is really great because it comes with spoke wheels of the bunch. The CB500X is the best because it has the most torque and it handles highway speeds the most. The 390 Adventure is also pretty great as it still has plenty of power, but it also comes with a lot of electronic wizardry. And the G310 GS is just a great dependable little motorcycle, which really can be improved with a Rally Raid kit. So those are three other options that I would also strongly consider. But I'd also suggest to you to think outside the square a bit. Adventure bikes tend to command a premium. Maybe look at some small sports tourers as well, like the Tracer 700 or the Versys 650. Picking something like that up secondhand, it might cost the same as a Versys X300 new. You get more power, you get more comfort, slightly better suspension, all these other things that you don't get purely for the adventure tax that I call it, as adventure bikes really are the it motorcycle at the moment. Manufacturers know this and will charge you a lot. But in saying that, adventure bikes really do make great commuters with their wind protection, lots of electronics. You're sitting up high so you can see through the traffic. So I think you're on the right track, mate. The X300 makes a lot more sense on the road than a DRZ 400, but don't discount the competition. Go and test ride them all if you can. That's the biggest thing in my opinion. I've found that plenty of times. I've had a bike in my head that I really wanted, and I go and test ride it and it just doesn't live up to the expectation. So test ride everything before you buy. I hope that helps, mate, and enjoy the shiny new motorcycle, whichever one it is that you choose. So Bob is commenting on me talking about the DR350 and how I think it would be great to bring this bike back in the modern era. And he's saying, I obviously haven't ridden one because they were crap when they came out and the DRZ 400 is far superior. Well, I haven't ridden one. Of course, the DRZ is a better bike than the DR350. It was superseded and better in every way. It was the next step up from the DR350. So I'll agree to disagree, mate. I thought when the DR350 did come out in its era, it wasn't a bad bike. If Austin Vince could go around the world twice on it, then it can't be that bad. Obviously, as time has moved on, it hasn't been kind to the DR350, and it certainly wasn't a great bike by the end of its career, but it still was a great concept, and that's what I'm talking about. the DR350 as an idea for a motorcycle. I think if that was brought into modern times and made a modern motorcycle, I think there is a lot of argument and a lot of room there for that motorcycle to do very well in the modern market. So that's what I was talking about in regards to the DR350. So the next comment is from Mid Coast Adventures, and he's saying he really likes this Bike Banter format. So thanks for letting me know. I love the feedback from you guys. And he's also saying that he really misses my off-road adventures. So do I, mate, and probably more than you do. It really is driving me crazy at the moment not having a dual sport. Some of the guys are already going out and getting into the off-road riding without me. So it really is making me get a bit of a nervous tick when it comes to off-road riding. Now, I do have my eye on a motorcycle. A mate will be selling me his WR250R, but I just have to wait for him as he's really busy at the moment. So I can't really force anything at the moment. I've just got to be patient. So I will be getting a bike soon. And yes, I will be having off-road adventures again, but I'm just going to have to be patient for a little while longer. So I thought I'd just quickly update you on how all that's going. So the next question is from Samuel, and I'm going to need my trusty iPad as it is a long one. Samuel is saying, good vid, mate. Thank you. And he is saying, what do I think of big bore kits? Well, I haven't had a big bore kit on any of my motorcycles, so take my opinion with a grain of salt, but it really is depending on what you're after. Now, I think if you're wanting more torque out of, say, a 250R, a WR that is, an Athena kit really is a great idea, as you still get all the fantastic things of the WR250, except you just get a little more torque and a little more power, and it's something I am considering for my next 250R. I also hear that the big bore kit on the DRZ is a fantastic mod if you're a bit of a speed hungry demon or performance demon. But in my experience, in my youth, when I was into rice burner cars and I used to have super sports and go to track days, increasing the performance usually creates other problems on the bike. So the faster you make a bike go, you're going to need bigger brakes to stop it. You're also going to need better suspension to deal with the better performance out of the motor, as the suspension's going to have to work harder as you push it further and further. So that's something to think about. I wouldn't recommend it if you got a bike on a warranty, but other than that, if you're just wanting more performance out of the bike that you have and you love everything else about it, then why not? So Samuel keeps going from there. He wants to add to the short rider vid that I previously had, and he is saying yes, the TTR 230 is a great bike for short riders, as he's 163 centimeters tall and he's also quite light, so it's a very good bike for that purpose. But he's saying he's starting to find the limits of it. He's taking it to MX tracks and it really isn't doing well. I'm not surprised, mate. They really aren't made for that kind of riding. Samuel's saying that he's thinking of getting either a DRZ 400E or a WR450, as most of his riding is in the Pilbara trails and on MX tracks. Well, given that you're on MX tracks, I have no experience with MX bikes or MX tracks. I've never really ridden on one at speed or with any confidence, so I don't feel like that's my wheelhouse. But of the two on an MX track, I think the 450F would be a much better bike. The suspension, the brakes, everything on the 450F is better than the DRZ, other than durability, longevity, and highway comfort. So given that you need none of those things on the MX track, the 450F makes way more sense. Now, out in the Pilbara on the trails, might be a different story. The WR450F is a very competent bike, but you really have to ride it hard to get the most out of the bike. It likes the high-speed desert racing kind of style. So if that's your thing, it's a great bike. But if you're doing more slower, twisty, tight trails, I think the DRZ might be a little better. It's less prone to overheating. You can ride it on the road to get to the faraway places. And you can also take it further on adventure trips, maybe do some camping trips. It's a more versatile motorcycle. But I'd also throw in there, look at the CRF 450L, as it's the in-between between those two bikes. Maybe even the 250F if you don't need all the power of the 450F, as the 250F's another great bike. There's heaps and heaps of options. So don't limit yourself just to the 400 and the WR450F. Again, think of other bikes in those categories as well, as there's plenty of options. So the final comment is from Peter, and he's agreeing that he really thinks the EXC-D idea that I had in Adventure News is a great one. My major complaint with the KTM EXC-F series is that particularly the 350, the gearing is a little too short for the highway, And I really would like to see that bike have a version where the oil changes and the engine rebuilds were made a little bit better. Think of the CRF 450L. If they could at least make that mark, I would buy one in a heartbeat. I wouldn't get the WR250R. I'd throw all my money at KTM, as that would be my ideal bike. I don't quite need the performance of a 450, but a 350 is just that sweet spot for me. A little more torque than a 250, but not the overwhelming power of a 450. But that is coming from someone that isn't that great off-road. But that's my ideal bike. But I think that KTM are making way too much money with their F series and two-stroke to really bother at the moment making a D series, and the likelihood of them actually doing it is about the same likelihood as my hairline coming back to what it was in my 20s. Also, quickly, if you could let me know whether you like this Premiere function or not. I've really enjoyed being able to interact with you in real time, but I'd like to know what you think. Is this something you want me to continue into the future, or do you absolutely hate this Premiere thing and you want me to end it and just upload like normal? Let me know in the comment section down below. As always, guys, I've been Chronicles of Solid, and I'll catch you in the next vid. Shiny side up.